Here we are again, three wise men, still figuring it out. Our guest today is Kathleen McIntyre. Kathleen has been leading therapeutic and life-changing experiences in nature since 1998. She received a Master's of Forest Resources in 1999 and began the journey of fusing her passion and knowledge of land conservation and restoration with nature's wisdom teachings for profound personal healing and transformation. She weaves somatic and nature therapy along with presence-based and embodiment coaching and supporting individuals and groups. Kathleen is currently completing a master's degree in clinical social work and putting the final touches on her upcoming book, The Nature Reset. Welcome, Kathleen.
Thank you. Welcome. I'm so glad to be with you guys.
So glad to have you.
So, in any circle, I love to start us all centered and landing in our body because it is the foundation of nature connection, I believe, right? I'll take you back before I even lead this. It's because it's one of the foundational practices. But I remember, I was hiking from Denver to Durango on the Colorado Trail.
Okay.
So it's about 480 something miles. And I got to the top of this mountain peak and I'm like, I feel nothing. I feel nothing. And I'm like, how is that possible? How can I be at one of the most beautiful places on the earth and not feel it? Right. And so it was that kind of sent me on this, I was despairing, but what am I missing? Because I was out in nature, literally as a kid, I was out in nature all the time. I led, even before, hiking the Colorado Trail, leading women on adventure trips. So, I had been out in nature so much, and yet I was disconnected from my body. So it was almost I was looking out. So I love nature. It's so important. And I feel like the missing piece for profound healing with nature is the embodiment piece, right? Because I know a lot of really amazing people who live out in the woods and are very dysregulated, right? Because it doesn't mean you can be out in the woods and still not receive his medicine because you're missing the connection. And the connection happens when you're in your body, right? So you can admire wow, that's really pretty. But then the next level is oh my gosh, that is, you feel it, right? You feel that connection. And I know you all are all very connected with nature. So you get that piece. Well, as a kid, I was dysregulated, anxious. I loved to play, but it was I think for those who, and I would say most people these days with all the stress, anxiety, a lot of people are internally dysregulated all the time. And so I think the crux move in nature therapy is landing in the body first. And so it's the foundational practice. So in my book, I really go, it's the foundational body practice. And there's so many different embodiment practices, but it's this one's so simple. We can just do it together, and whoever's listening can try it out.
That's awesome.
And I just call it the foundational body practice.
Yeah.
And it's really you land just feeling your feet on the earth. So oftentimes we forget we have feet. Because we're up here so much. We are always thinking. So it's all right, let's just pause and feel your feet on the ground. Noticing your heels, noticing the balls of your feet. It's okay, there, I've got feet. And sometimes we can be so disconnected, it's helpful to feel one foot at a time, and then the other foot. Then noticing the tingling, the subtle sensations. It's we're landing in. And then just allowing ourselves to feel the earth, and then allowing the earth to rise up to meet us. So we settle down, and we allow her to rise up. We ask her to rise up to meet us where we're at. And that can be inside or outside. So it's that dance between us settling down and the allowing of her to rise up to meet us and offer us that stability and groundedness. So we've dropped into our feet. So I call that the first anchor point. And then just noticing your breath with ease, just the rhythmic inhalation and exhalation through your nose, just so nice and easy. And keeping that awareness of your breath as you're feeling your body. Now bring your awareness to your hips. So you can feel one hip, really the felt sensation of having a hip. It's occupying yourself in your body. It's there's my hip. Feeling sensations, maybe there's tightness. So just whatever you can feel there, just notice it because that's helping you land and anchor in your body. And you can take a breath in. And as you exhale, sending your energy into that hip. So it's like you're taking up your width on that side. And then we invite that same level of awareness to the other side. So feeling the other hip and tingling, sensation, just noticing your hip. And taking a breath in. And as you exhale, sending your energy into that hip, really taking up your space. Now feel both hips at the same time. It's like, woo, you've landed into yourself even more. You're anchoring in. So I call this as the second anchor point. And feeling your feet and your hips at the same time. And then bringing your awareness up to your shoulders. The same thing as we did with our hips. Feeling one shoulder and just the sensations like, there I am. I'm going to occupy my body. I'm going to occupy the shoulder. And taking your breath in. As you exhale, sending your energy into that one shoulder. Feeling the subtle sensations. Again, taking up your width dimension. And then the same with the other shoulder. So noticing just subtle sensations. Noticing, I have a shoulder. Taking your breath in. And as you exhale, sending your energy into that shoulder. Now feeling both of your shoulders at the same time. Allowing them just to soften and relax and settle down. And then softening your face, around your eyes, your forehead, your jaw. Softening your hands, and then landing in your heart. So feeling the area around your heart. And it's just a noticing. It's just, just feeling that space. And even inviting softness. And now you're in your body. It's like, here you are. Here we are. And we actually, like, when we do this, when we land here, like, we perceive the world very differently. And, like, when I work with people in the woods, so I do nature therapy in the woods, like, this is what we'll oftentimes begin with because we settle in. Right? And then it's like, whatever, so now we're in our bodies. Now we can connect with the community around us. Like, our trees, the birds, the cicadas. Then we're really able, the static is cleared. It's like, all of our relations, now we can see you, now we can feel you. And so, like in a therapeutic session, our relations, I mean, they help, that they support us in healing and for truth to rise up. Because again, like when you're in a container of truth, of course your own truth is going to rise up.
Yeah, and it's like this felt like a reset, just like a total reset of the body.
Yeah. It's amazing. And so from there, they're like, now we can connect.
For sure.
And we're grounded in, right?
Yeah.
So that's medicine.
Thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's quick, right? Like it just doesn't. So, and I do that with people on retreats, and it's just like so the book. It's like I have 20-something nature practices in it, and they all start with that, coming back home to the body. Are y'all familiar with John O'Donohue?
Yeah.
Okay, so John O'Donohue is just like probably like one of my most favorite. He's passed, but favorite humans of all times. He's a Celtic mystic, theologian, poet, just amazing human, and just speaks my language. But he refers to the body as like it's the clay of the body, right? And it's so beautiful. It's like, we just come back home to the clay of our body, right? The clay of our body, the clay of the earth. Now we're in resonance. Now we're supported. We drop in.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that was really nice. I've had a super busy day today, like getting up at 5:30 and getting kids ready for school and to school, and then closing at 9 a.m. and just like pretty intense stuff and nonstop. So getting here, I was, I've just been go. So it was like, but that was like a really beautiful reset very quickly.
That's awesome. I'm glad.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I just have to say I'm so excited to have you here. I mean, I think we've known each other for, 8-10 years, but I'm pretty sure it's lifetimes.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I just I know we've talked a little bit over the years about the stuff you've been doing, and I know you've been leading retreats down to Costa Rica, and it sounds like you have some coming up in other places all over the place. And I'd just love to hear more about what you're doing and, you know, what's really lighting you up right now in your work.
So, you know, one thing that really lights me up, I love working with people. Like it really, I feel like, and I feel like you're the same way. It's like, I feel like whenever I can, I mean, even being with y'all, like whenever I'm with people and sharing and offering, like it's almost a handout, like here's the bridge back to your body, here's the bridge back to nature. Like it really does. Like it is my passion, it's my mission, and it's really is like I use this word of reclamation. So my master's in forestry, I did land reclamation. It's like, so basically I took drastically disturbed land, like that was mined, completely it was a wasteland, and turned it into a productive ecosystem. Right? So that's fantastic. So I apply land, so I know land reclamation to reclamation of the human, I call it like soul reclamation. But it also happens like reclamation of the body, of the mind, of the spirit. And so it's just like, so my passion is like, just that is helping people see like we're resilient. You are resilient. You're as resourced as nature, right? Any lesson, any law that applies to nature applies to us. And so like, so my work right now is like, it's just like talking with as many people who will listen, leading retreats, and I'm like really trying to get this book out there, which is basically has everything. It's like, I feel like it's 20 something years in the making, and I feel like I'm really excited.
Can you say the name of the book?
It's called The Nature Reset.
The Nature Reset, okay.
Yeah, and it's how we can not only, so to me this book it answers the climate crisis and it answers the mental health crisis. And the reason why it does both is I truly feel that if like we as humans are connected to nature, we're going to behave differently. You're going to protect it. You're going to take care of it. And your decisions, whether you're a city manager, a developer, you know, some like a philanthropist, you're going to use your resources. You're going to use the design process to create wins for both humans and nature, right? So that's sustainability is like, it's threefold. It's like economic, environmental, and human, and all three kind of have to get in that sweet spot, that sustainable spot where everything is met. But we have to like I even watch like in the sustainability community, there's practices of sustainability, but oftentimes there's still a disconnect from the earth. So people are making sustainable choices that are really great, and there's a piece that's disconnected from nature. Like for example, there's a project in my town of Davidson where they're going to clear out some of these treasure trees in order to have a super, 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 super wide sidewalk, right? So win for humans, and it does. I mean, there's a potential win for, you know, theoretically, you know, it would provide, hopefully people drive less and walk more. You know, that's the hope. But you know, these treasure trees are like, you know, at school. So this is next to the school that I started. I mean, they're elders to us, right? And so like that, you know, that could be sustainability minded, but like if you're nature connected minded, you're gonna think out what's the win-win for both. What's the win for like more mobility, less car use, and what's the win for nature? Because usually with a little bit more creative designing, you can figure out a win for both, right? But it takes a different lens. And so my hope is that I get to talk to as many people, and it's also, it's like, it's a lens, it's a lens that will save the planet.
Yeah, it's just, it seems like, it's something I've thought about a lot. I feel like it's like, we can do all these things, but it's really our consciousness. It has a different level of consciousness, and which is awareness of connection. You know, we're more deeply connected with the natural world. And when we feel that way, then we do take these other things into account naturally. Because there's another thing I've thought about too is like, you know, we're only going to protect what we love.
Yes.
You know,
totally.
and so I really get how helping people connect to nature and their connection, their deeper connection, is just like shifting that consciousness. Then everything's informed by that. Yeah. Consciousness.
That's, I mean, 100%. That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
And we kind of alluded before we started today in regard to this, like it's a remembrance. And the remembrance that I just can't help but draw this in because it just keeps coming back as a main focal point based on the many things that I've learned and studied. And it's the law of one, the oneness of everything. So in connecting and dropping into your body and connecting to nature, and by nature, typically people think about trees, plants, what have you, but then there's also the animals, and that all brings you back to then the connection to all of that, and then ourselves, like, and how it's all interconnected, and how powerful that is, and that remembrance, because it's almost like because I can remember a point in time where that awareness wasn't there, because you're almost, it seems like you're asleep at the wheel.
Yeah.
And then it's that recalling and that connection that gets you, and then you watch that grow. Once you have that, you watch that grow in your connections with people to your point where you start having these discussions and that remembrance in regards to, hey, okay, so how can we do these things and take this into consideration? Because your point in remembering nature, that's the most important. Like, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, totally. Yep, agreed, 100%.
I'm curious. It was just coming to me when you were talking about all that. I just couldn't. All of a sudden, I was thinking AI. I was thinking technology, and I was like, "What does Kathleen? What do you feel the role that technology plays in that whole situation?" I mean, because I'm always asking myself this too. Sometimes I feel like technology is completely evil. And then I see that we're doing this right now, and this is reaching people over the world. So it's can be really a positive thing given the world we live in these days.
Yes. So I mean, I think it's like, again, like, I think it's both. Yes, technology can be so helpful, and technology can be a solution, but also can be a big distraction, right? And so, like, sometimes, like, even in the world of sustainability, like, sometimes the simplest solutions are the best solutions, and like technologically heavy solutions aren't really that effective, right? But then they also can be. Like, we can look at Paul Stamets and mushrooms. Well, man, mushrooms are pretty high technology in a sense, right? That's nature's technology.
That's AI right there.
That's that, right? So that's
Nature's
intelligence, nature's wisdom. And I like that. But I think with technology, again, it's like, if you are connected to your body and connected to the natural world, it can be used as a really effective tool.
Yeah.
Right? So as long as technology is held as a tool, I started a school, the Davidson Green School, and like technology, it was like, we're not anti-technology, but we're sure not going to introduce it to our little kids. We don't introduce technology until 4th grade. Because they don't need it. It's not the tools, like, we use the tools of the culture very purposely.
Absolutely.
Right? And so, like, if we adults used tools of the culture, technology really purposely, then it would be used for great things.
Right.
But right now, a lot of times, it ends up being tools of distraction. Because they oftentimes are like dopamine hits, so they numb us out, right? And we've gotten addicted to that versus like the medicine of nature, the medicine of connection, which is contentment and feeling at peace.
Or it's used to, like, put the conglomerates ahead, the corporations and those types of things, and pushing us further back in this evolution of technology.
Or keeping us distracted.
Or distracted.
Right?
For sure.
It feels like
So we're not looking and not watching what's happening.
Right.
It's like a constant battle for our attention. It feels like, just like, look over here, stuck, like, wanting like to feed off of our attention. It feels like sometimes, like, whether it's either just even just to buy the product that the people are selling or whatever, but also the distraction and everything. And yeah, I really like what you said, because I've thought about that too. Like, you're saying, if people are grounded in their connection with nature, like, I've thought about that with Finn, my son, who's 13 years old, and he's going into this time where social media is becoming more of a thing, and I'm like, ooh, how do we navigate or help him navigate this whole thing? And that is the solution I've come up with, is just like, if he has deep roots into his connection with the earth, that kind of in a way builds a strong immune system in a sense to the pull of technology or the distraction of it. And it's like, but that's something that needs to be continually, like, worked with and nurtured and nourished and the connection to things, because one thing, the reason I asked that question, I had concerns about, I've seen a lot of, especially young men, boys, when they, after high school, going off to college and stuff like that, and going off to live on their own. I have some friends who have kids who they're just totally untethered, and they're so in, like, this alternate reality that they don't know their place in the world. They don't understand what they feel. They feel more like a computer or a robot or something than a human.
Right.
And that's, I feel like, a big part of the, the crisis of our, mental states and stuff.
Oh yeah, well they're completely disconnected from their bodies, and they're disconnected from the world around them. So they are just lost. I mean, you're lost.
Right.
Yep.
Lost.
Sure.
I gotta ask, have you ever, based on your school, and I know it's not one of these schools, but are you familiar with Rudolf Steiner?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
because a lot of the premise of what you're talking about, especially from introduction of any kind of technology, is removed in the early stages. It's that allowance to let them learn almost on their own and through interaction, but also with nature.
Yeah.
And establishing that deep connect, which gives them some idea of who they are from an early age, as opposed to all the things and all the distractions that come in.
Oh,
and I had to throw that, because that. And can you say your school's name again?
Davidson Green School.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's for any listeners. That's Davidson, North Carolina, correct? Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it starts in primary, it starts at 3-year-olds and goes to 8th. And so it's interesting, like, we focus a lot on nature connection, because I feel like that is, like, to me, that's like, if schools could help reconnect children to nature, like that can also save the planet, because like these, like the kids at our school, like, we've got these trees about to come down and they're grieving. They are so sad because like they see trees.
That's amazing.
More than the function.
Right.
Like, right, like, so most people like, okay, habitat, shelter, cooling, whatever, like the trees have a function, but like our kids see them more than trees. And so so it's a grief. So like, we've done our job well, and I'm sorry you have to experience grief, but like there should, every child should when they see a tree going down should feel it.
Right.
Because that inhale, like, wait a minute, what's happened? How can we do that? Our elders, they're
friends,
they're
like
friends.
they're living beings.
Yes.
Consciousness and like.
I even had a girl yesterday said to me, like, okay, knowing to this one tree is coming down, like, man, these are two friends, like, we're going to our tree every day and we're playing with it and we're talking to it, like, you know what I mean? And it's like, and these kids are also, they're very, very brilliant, so it's like you don't have to sacrifice like nature connection and mindfulness for sheer brilliance, right? So it's like there's this balance, but like we could change the planet pretty quickly and in a short time if people just connected.
It's like those sound things that I think a guy in Germany made, that you can connect into the trees and actually get sound off of, like, the vibrational sound off of the trees and plants, and hear them sing, and
you can feel them.
For sure, yeah.
Right? Like, so like it doesn't, like, and I'll take people out on a retreat, especially like when we're, like on a week long, it's enough for everybody's, like, the static to settle. And so like people can feel them without touching, and even almost you can feel a tree more so than when you actually touch it. It actually sometimes takes away, like, it's the power of the tree. It's like you feel it.
That reminds me of a game we play with the kids sometimes, where we'll take them out in the woods and we'll blindfold them and spin them around. Or no, first of all, they'll go and pick a tree that they like, and like it just there's no, and then we'll blindfold them, spin them around, and they're supposed to go and try to find the tree.
Oh, I love that.
And but when they go to the first time, they go and they hug it, they smell it, they just get to know it really intimately, and they all the time go to the tree and find it. Like, they just are tuned because they can feel it. Like, they can.
That's amazing.
And they love it too. It's such a fun game for
that.
them, and it makes them, realize that connection, and then the reality, the truth of that exists, and so.
That's such a great activity. Oh my gosh, I want to try that. I love that.
That's amazing.
That is.
Pin the tail on the tree.
That is awesome.
How did your journey? How did it start? Like, what drew you?
I was one of those kids. I'm probably like y'all. Like, I'd play outside all the time. Like, it was my place of solace. And then, I just kind of had a heart for environmental protection. Even even in high school, like, I started our first environmental club. I had like the table at Earth Days. This was like in 1990. So it really started back then, and then I went so it's like just this call to protect the environment. Like, it was really like deep in my bones. Like. And so really I started off so my undergraduate is in environmental health science, which is like how humans impact, like the effect that humans have on the earth and how that impacts our health, right? So we talk toxicology, solid hazardous waste, like how that affects us too, and obviously how it affects nature. And then when I was done, I'm like, this isn't quite it, because I'm not really interested in like sticking a notice of violation on somebody who's going to, I literally, like, I was working for the state as an intern and realizing like, oh wow, you can pay money and not have to change your environmental behavior. So I'm like, okay, this isn't for me. I'm going to go a different route. So then I'm about to grad school and then forestry, land reclamation. And then I'm going like, that wasn't quite it either, because at the time when I got out, like regenerative agriculture, a lot of the things that you're seeing now, it just wasn't a thing. Like, so kind of my options were timber or mined land reclamation. And I was like, I'm not interested in cleaning up other people's messes either. So then I was like, okay, education. Like that's how I'm going to make my biggest difference is in education. And so it just kind of evolved into, and I realized like education, but then that's also my own healing journey too, because I was struggled with anxiety. And so I guess I've always been on this search. How can I make the biggest impact for environmental protection, and keep looking? And I'm like, and this is where I've landed. And also, like, nature was so healing to me, and I love offering that to other people. And so, like, they both came together. So it was like, oh gosh, yes, healing people. Like, if you realize, like, one, obviously, if you have a connection with nature, you're going to protect it. But also, if your anxiety goes away and your depression goes away, and you're like, oh my gosh, it was because of nature. You're gonna, I mean, like as we talked earlier, you're gonna protect it, right?
Right.
And you're gonna be a more productive citizen, and you're gonna live sustainably. Because like if we have anxiety, depression, if we're shut down, there's no way we're gonna have a sustainable future, right? Because when you're surviving, you're only seeing what's right in front of you because you're like literally just trying to survive, right? So we need people to reclaim themselves and step into their power and step into their truth and to offer their gifts to the world. I mean, and nature is saying, here, come, I can help you. I can help heal your body and your mind and spirit. Just come to me. And so, yeah, that's how I'll piece it together in a sense.
Well, and so something you mentioned there, because this has always been, since the moment I realized it, you indicated and noted survival, and you see, I've watched how that's thrown out, that word specifically, just in all forms. And what I find interesting about it is survives. We're not intended to survive. We should be thriving, and what you're talking about is thriving. How do we thrive? How do we thrive with the land? How do we help the land thrive?
Yes, you nailed it. That's exactly right. We've got to move to that. Like our nervous systems, you're not meant to be in survival mode indefinitely. No. Autoimmune issues, cancers, like it's just like it's not sustainable. Right. So yeah. So like, how do we thrive where we're planted? Right. Where we find ourselves. And so part of my thing too is like we all don't have to go to the wilderness, right? There are ways like. I know, like within suburbia and urban contexts, we can connect to nature. We just have to expand our idea of what nature is, right? And then, now we want pilgrimage to a pristine area very gently, but we can get our nature fix right where we're at. We've got the blue sky. You've got your shower. You've got a direct connection with the water, right? So it's really, it's seeing the nature wherever we're at and accessing nature's medicine. And that's really what the nature reset's about too. It's like, it's not about going off to, I mean, there is some, like, I do talk about forest bathing, but I have different categories of like neighborhood practices. Like, how do we connect with nature right in our neighborhood? How do we do that indoors? I've got practices for indoors, right? We need to receive nature's dose of nature every day. And we can, with a little bit of intentionality. It's restorative.
Yeah, it's like earthing. Like going outside, taking your shoes off,
right.
standing on the
Like absolutely.
Which is so vital. It's so funny because you mentioned earthing, and then something that happened, like this happened today, and I get to because you just alluded to it. So I'm standing in my home, getting ready to come here, and I notice all of a sudden, because I was a little bit chilly. Today's one of those days where it starts off cold, but it warms up, and I literally all of a sudden I felt this warmth on the back, and I just realized the sun was just beaming through and hit that, and I quickly, I realized, and I was like, thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
Because it's that awareness that you're talking about. Again, it's always coming back to that awareness, and that grounding.
And to feel it, like you said thank you, and I think the thank you is such a crux move with nature connection.
Right.
Thank you puts us in our heart, and it puts us in connection. So I'm so glad you mentioned that, because the thank you is like with every nature connection practice, it's the thank you, and you just like.
That kind of reminds me of, like, you know, we talk about, and I think I've talked to you about that, the infinity symbol type thing. It's like the thank you is actually like receiving, you know, and then you're like in that flow of, you know, the giving and receiving, and that's what I feel like that's so much of the connection, and like the thank you, or like seeing, you know, something and like that beautiful, like, hi, you know, and just like feeling that kind of energy. It's like this exchange of acknowledging it, and like, and then I feel like it opens up that flow and that conversation, you know, that sounds, you know, out there and woo-woo kind of, I think, to some people, but I think it's fun to just even try those things, just play with it, you know, just like even just be like, oh, like, hi to the plants or whatever. Then like over time, I feel like you start to realize, whoa, there's really something here. I'm starting to like notice more about this. It's revealing itself more. Or I'm noticing more, whatever it is, you know, and which I think is, you know, I sometimes think like that's like being curious or being like caring, you know, which is just like it's a form of love, you know. I mean, to be curious is like an act of love. You actually care and you want to know, oh, hi, plant, like I'm interested in you, you know, and I feel like in a way I feel like all of nature, at least my experience, like likes being seen.
Oh my gosh, you could
know?
not say that better.
Just like we do, you know, we want to be seen and like, and you know, and it's like, and it's like, and then it's like, and I found that, or even with the stars, where sometimes I looked up and I've seen the stars, and I feel like they're like, ah, I'm like, hi, and they're like, thank you for seeing us, you know. I'm like, oh, whoa, I've looked at you so much, but I forgot to see you.
Yes.
You know? Right. And so that's.
Remember because you've talked about retreats, and I want to kind of use this as a catalyst for you to talk a little bit about your experience. But we've had our own we've got a men's group, and we had men's retreats where we go camping. And to your point, because I'll never forget, it was one of the first times we were out there, and we were fortunate in regards to the land where we were on, and we walked out into this clearing that literally the clearing framed the sky. And we saw, remember that night that everyone was looking at, and it's like we hadn't seen stars before. Yeah. And it's incredible.
Yes.
And that connection.
And you feel it in your whole body.
Yeah. Absolutely. But I wanted to connect to that, and then have you kind of talk about your retreat experience and what you do, and how listeners might be able to relate. Yeah,
that's a great. Thank you. And I want to say that like that's like on these retreats, like that really is that there's it's the invitation. It's a constant like be curious, suspend judgment, stay in the imaginal. Yep. Right. So it's like putting our minds. It was like when we when like on a retreat, like okay, so we're gonna land in our hearts, right? So what if we like even for somebody listening, like what if you spent like 2 hours outside in your heart? Right? Like what would that be like? What would happen there? Right? So, and that's the invitation I give on retreats, or even a day-long retreat. I've got one for Earth Day on May 22nd with Wendy doing yoga. It's the invitation of being curious, being non-judgment, playing the imaginal, creating space for the unknown, the mystery, and which is all what you're talking about, because then you start when you're curious, you do start to see things like, oh, I didn't notice that before. And then if you're in your body, you're like, oh, I really feel that. And I agree 100%, like nature delights when we delight in nature. Like it is received. And then it's like, oh wait. Like anytime, like literally, like I walk down the street in Davison and like I tune into my trees, and they're like I can walk by without awareness, or I can walk by and be like, oh, hello, and like tune with my heart, and they're like, oh, hello. It is felt. So I just wanted it to piggyback on that. But then, it's like, so at the retreats, it's what, like, I really focused on these experiences such as that, to where you can take it home and practice, right? So like, even like that example of like walking down the street and like feeling the tree and being grateful for that tree and connecting with it. Like, I'll do that. We'll do that in Costa Rica, like on a path, right? Being like, okay, so now take this practice, take it home. And so like you practice it, and really it's like I think everyone needs to retreat because it's we're so busy, and just to step out of the world and unplug is so essential for our nervous systems. Once, like a week long once a year, a weekend each quarter, or a day each quarter, but just to really like unplug and step out. But what I really want to do, like on my retreats, is like have it be such a deeply restorative experience and tools to go back, because you don't have to be in the middle of the woods to connect with a tree. There are trees everywhere.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's the tools to integrate what you experience. Like you have that experience on these retreats, and then like now how do you integrate that into your life? And
you can still have it like that. You can have as mystical of an experience with a tree in Charlotte as you can down in the jungle of Costa Rica.
Right.
I know that 110%. Right. And so it's like we have to like it's right here where you're at. It doesn't, you don't have to travel halfway around the world to find nature.
That's what I keep getting from everything you've been saying. It feels like it's just like it's right here at your fingertips.
Yeah.
Everything. Like it's like, yes, it's great to go do all these other things, but all of it, all the elements are right here all the time. Present within us too. Because we are nature. And then, but it's all right here. So there's really also in a way like no excuse not to do it. There isn't, me. It's not like, oh yeah, it's just so hard to get out on a hike or something like that, so I can't connect with nature. So it's like, I really like that of just like realizing that it's right here,
or a cup of tea
in front of us.
Like a cup of tea with the herbs that you know. Or you could live I lived in New York City. Like you can have a little pot of lemon balm, which grows anywhere in a window, and you can pick a leaf off and put it in some tea, and now you have a connection, and you can have a ceremony. Like people do cacao ceremonies, lovely. And how about a lemon balm ceremony? Right? How about a ceremony with like mint that you grow?
I was just going to say spearmint, absolutely.
Easy peasy.
Rose.
Yes.
Right, rose, 100%. Like, right? And it's like anything is powerful when you do it with reverence and intention, right? And the medicine is right. It's right there, and you grow it, and you take it in, and have a relationship.
I love how you just said with reverence and intention. One of the and we like this, and I'm going to see if I'm sure you've heard this, but for our listeners, the Hopi prayer. When you read that Hopi prayer, and there's something that you can take away from it each time. There's so many meaningful things, but one of the things, everything we do now needs to be done in a sacred manner. And so to your point, just doing, when you do this, and this I say this for anyone listening or following, do that with intention. When you do, it's amazing the difference that's created, right?
100%.
And it seems like that's been your experience, not just yourself, but that's, as you've shown people, they've seen that.
Absolutely.
How powerful it is.
Oh, 100%. It is like, it is the intention behind which we do everything. Like, and that's like, and that is every tradition, like every tradition, like that's, it imbues the power, and it just brings us to the present moment. It aligns us with the present moment, aligns us to our bodies and to what's true. It's like, here we are. Yeah. Okay. And so like, I want people to realize walking down the street is a sacred act. I don't care, trees, like all the people, that's a sacred act because the earth is beneath you.
Right.
And there's going to be some plants. Even if there's a dandelion coming up to the sidewalk and that's all you got, there's a dandelion. And dandelions have powerful medicine. Every part of that is used for medicine, right? Yeah. So it's like, and so, it's like, but it's looking for the sacred. And so like, it's interesting we're talking about this now because like today, like I'm kind of getting the book completely, like just the final touches, like final little edits, and I was working on the chapter on neighborhood practices. And so it's interesting, but it's like, it is so, I think they're the most important ones because this is where we live. And it's like, I use like, this is a term of like, I think like microdosing nature. Like we've got to seek for all these little moments to where we can tune into nature. And if you do that throughout the day, by the time you go to bed, you're gonna be filled up. Yeah. Right? Like you got these house plants, you got this window. It's like, moment, I see the leaves swaying. Thank you.
And it's like starting, like you start with the first plant, and then all these other plants show up.
Right. Right.
It's interesting when you were talking about that. I kept getting this feeling of like you're tuning into like the vertical nature of life too. Like, because I was thinking about like sometimes when we're not tuned in, we're like, I always see this like we're like a stone skipping across the water sometimes, but then you kept going like this, but it was just like being like in that like deeper present in intentionality in the moment. It's like tuning into the vertical side of things where I think a lot of times we can be skipping across, on the surface level kind of, and so it's like a deeper presence that, just I feel like from that being in that, it brings intentionality too. I feel
100%.
But it's through practices, little simple practices, even like the reset that you did for us at the beginning, that brings us into that ground where we're grounded, into the earth.
And I love like the depth that you mentioned. It's like that depth. It takes a little bit of time. Takes us to slow down. Takes us to unplug. So like people are like talking to a friend when they're out. They think they're out in nature, but they're focused on the phone.
Right.
Or they think they're out in nature and listening to a podcast.
Yeah.
Well, you're kind of in nature, but you're kind of not.
Yeah.
Like, love podcasts. Podcasts are great.
Yeah,
but there's a time and place.
This is a
right?
yes,
This
so
is a
absolutely,
right.
yeah.
And it is like, so when I say, when you do a nature practice, like, so if you're going to walk your dog for 10 minutes, make it a practice. Intentional. Right? Because then you can drop deep into the practice. Right? And then you begin to, like, I was doing a practice with kids, so I'd lead mindfulness at the school. And it's like this week has really been like, how do we notice the subtle? Right? And it's like, we miss the subtle so much, and that's the depth, right? Because we get busy and we get distracted and we don't see, so we see the broad strokes of things, but like to drop in takes us to move slower, and there's the depth, right? And that's how we feel the trees, and that's how we connect, right? And that's how we see each other, right? Rather than just looking at you and glancing on, it's like I'm dropping in, and I'm noticing the subtlety of our interaction.
And what that is that's an expanded state of consciousness.
It is.
It is because the other is kind of blinders on, just like and it's like when you are tuning into the subtle, you're aware of way more that's going on, and it's just
and it leads to empathy, right? And so it leads to empathy, and I think that's like people who, especially I would say a lot of people who are disconnected, nature is the gateway, right? It's a great gateway of like how to heal our hearts, how to reconnect again, and then you establish that nature with that safety and connection and openness with nature. Then you can start trying that out with people who feel safe to try that out with, right? So it really is a gateway to like really powerful, healthy human relations, right?
And the cool thing about nature, it's free.
Yes, yes. You don't need. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
To anyone.
For your listeners out there.
Right.
And to anyone. I mean,
seriously. So because we talk about the important, everyone says, well, it isn't free. This is something that's free.
This is free.
Well, that's actually one of the things I keep thinking about too. Is like it's free in what you're saying. It's so simple. I think sometimes like our minds and our culture like need something more, or think that they're like, but that's like they want something more like bigger, like there's something that's not just like right here in front of you right now. That simple. I already have it. It's free. Like I need to pay for it or have some huge experience or something like that.
Well, it's oftentimes people who have the programs like, you need this. You need to pay multiple thousands of dollars.
We've been programmed
to think, and it keeps us. And I remember like I was like on such a path of seeking. So again, like back to my own spiritual journey, I was like, it was always out of reach, this peace, this inner peace I was longing for. Just like, and I felt like it just like, I couldn't, because I was looking out there and I was looking at all the things like, oh, if you just did this, or if you did like, and it just eluded me. And then it was like, and then I was sitting by a tree, and then it was just like this old oak tree was like, stop looking out there. It's all right here. Slow down. It's all right here. And it's with this connection, right? And it is. It's like, but I think that they distract us. They actually lead to discontentment because we're never going to find anything out there ever. We're always going to be chasing our tails. It's not until we land in here and connect in here that we actually heal. And then we actually find peace, because this is where peace is here.
Right. Yeah.
And you've alluded to it a number of times in this, so I just want to, for anyone listening or watching, I want to give an example. When we're talking about healing, there's the inward journey, which is what you were just alluding to, the inward journey versus the not paying as much attention to the external and focusing in here, which is absolutely vital importance and comes with this as you practice this. But can you talk to also a little bit about, because this is sometimes people just don't realize this, and the first time I literally read about it and heard about it, which was a tie into forest bathing, the air, like when you're out in actual nature, okay, so when you get away and you're in the forest, you're actually breathing in air with particles and molecules that are in it, like webs and pieces of tree, like literally what's being produced in it's it's honestly, it's nature's pharmacy.
Yeah, it's
and
the
it's
phenols.
literally healing your body.
Yeah, yep. The phenols in, especially like in evergreens, the phenols they produce, like it literally boosts our natural killer T cells. Like it's medicine. It elevates our mood, 100%. Yeah, it's medicine.
Right. And most people don't have that awareness. Like it actually is medicine.
Yeah.
That is different for, and don't get me wrong, you can get it out, for anyone who's in city life, you can get it just by being outdoors, but the dose that you get by being in actual nature is just mind blowing.
Yeah.
It really is.
100%.
It's really funny because I'm imagining some person who has no exposure to this stuff at all, and they hear us talking about it's medicine, and like so many people in this world think like when they think medicine, they think like something that you get at a pharmacy. You know what I mean? Like it's just so interesting to like how the programming, how like deep our culture is in that though, you know what I mean? Like it's like that we don't realize that we really have all the natural medicine we need, I mean, it's like, and that stuff is like for the most part poisoning us, the stuff, there's times, where Western medicine is really great at certain things, But,
absolutely, and we want to emphasize that there is a time and a place, but for the most part,
when you get in a car accident or something like that, and you
thank
need to be,
goodness,
right.
Yes.
absolutely,
Those fun things. Yes. And there's different parts of healing too. There's the healing of the cut. That's a different type of healing, and there's the healing of the internal spirit within the, kind of what we're talking about with the forest bathing. So
which is, but going back to your point, Jeff, which alludes to yours, like it's there, it's there. And it's vital. It's really, because it heals. I mean, again, we're mind, body, spirit.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely. So it is like physically, you're getting the phenols, the chemical compounds that actually, but then also it's like emotionally, like your system is down regulating, right? Like just the fact of being in nature or being out in your front yard and taking that space, like your parasympathetic nervous system's like, oh, hey, I'm okay, right? So then it corrects the over secretion of stress hormones, right? So that's healing, and so then then it's like, oh, here I am settling in.
And then you can actually hear your own intuition, your own internal guidance, because I feel like when we're in that fight or flight mode, we're disconnected from that, which is such an interesting thing I think about our world too, and how like you look at the news or something like that, immediately it triggers the fight or flight, like in all these different.
Oh my gosh!
And like they're pounding us with all that time, or that type of stuff, because if it bleeds, it reads. The whole thing of it, they want to capture our attention. So the animal part of us is looking for danger. So it reads that. So, but then when we're all disconnected like that, then we no longer are in touch with our own like deeper knowing. So it's that's a interesting thing of our time.
It's so interesting, because then you kind of fall in line, because you don't know you can't discern what's right for me and what's not right for me.
So when somebody's disconnected from that, they're very manipulatable too.
Yes, agreed.
And that's why people have always known rule through fear too, because it's like you're basically cutting somebody off from their roots, from their
Say that again.
knowing,
Rule through fear. Yeah, 100%.
And so then you can.
And like think about like indigenous people, like that's. Of any, like whether it was the Celts or of of North America, like they were taken off their land, the roots from which they were like literally, and so like then you're lost, right?
Yeah. So,
it's control and power,
right?
Yep.
So like I think a lot of us are wandering around homeless in a sense because we're not connected to the land where we're at, right? And then we're even more homeless because we're disconnected to the medicine in our body, to our wisdom, to our intuition. So now we're like, so a lot of in this book, it actually, before I called it Nature Reset, it was called The Journey Home. That was its first name, The Journey Home. Because it really is, it's like, it's how we come back home to ourselves. And that's where peace is, and that's where calm and
Nature's Reset, where can we get that?
So, great question. So it'll be coming out it should be in September.
Okay.
So I'll be putting up my website and doing a hopefully really big marketing campaign to get out in many hands as possible.
Yeah.
What is your website?
It's KatMcIntyre.com, KatMcIntyre.com.
Okay.
And social media? You on social media?
Okay, I do have social media. It's McIntyre.Kathleen, and like I hate to be on my phone. And so that's an area where like I really am I struggle with that because I'm like, it's not good for me. It's very time consuming.
Sure.
And so I don't know. Like I'm trying to decide: do I want to go down that rabbit hole with it? I might need to.
Well, and you might need to, but at the same time. So again, I want to be respectful of everything that you're talking about here today, and the importance based on your education, what you're trying to get out there and share with people. And I understand why you're doing that. So to when I hear you say this, the best way to access your retreats in your book is through your website.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Until something
Thank
changes.
you.
I know. Absolutely.
Yes, that is the best way. That will have my 100%. Thank you.
Although I will say that I did look at Instagram and I saw some really cool stuff from your trip to Costa Rica recently.
Okay.
It was like you guys had some epic experiences
Yeah.
with like dolphins.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Really?
Pretty incredible.
Like a triple crown day of dolphins and whales.
It was one of those things where I was like, I want to be there.
It was amazing. So I do post a little bit. So so I'm working on that. Yeah. So, but we will be going back to Costa Rica again next year. So it's kind of like I think we're going to do it an annual thing because it is so powerful. And there is medicine in the landscape, right? And different landscapes. So like Costa Rica has a medicine so unlike here,
Right.
right? And it really it has to do with like its history, like how it was formed, how it rises from the ocean. It's baby. It's so early compared to like our North America is old. We're, our Appalachian Mountains are the oldest in the world. So the energy in the mountains, I lead a retreat there. That energy is going to be very different. How the land was treated affects that. Like, are you by water? So different landscapes offer different medicines. So I do love to take people to different places. I'll be going to Iona this summer, and like when you have a yes. Like when you see a place like, oh my gosh, that's my place. Like there's some medicine there.
For sure.
Some deep medicine.
And so people, websites, the place to find out about the retreats that you're doing.
Exactly.
I had one question that kept coming up for me. I think you've answered it in many different ways, but I'm just curious what healing is to you, what the word healing means.
That's such a great question. To me, like, healing is to just be at peace, right? It's not about the body. It's just like, it's just to be like, I'm okay. And to be able to be in right relation with all, like with each other, with other humans, with the natural world. And like that's, it's like when we've come home to ourselves, that's healing. And it might not be like our bodies might not be working. That's irrelevant, right? But healing is like, it's here I am, I'm home. Yay.
Interesting. When you were just saying that, I've never thought about it this way, but I was hearing it like as a way of being, rather than like, oh, I'm healed. Like, it's like, there's no such thing as that. It felt like to me just now, it was like healing is like, it just felt like more like a way of being, a state, or a state almost, like,
that's my perspective. It's like
being okay.
I'm okay. No matter what.
Exactly.
No matter what, I'm home. I'm okay. I'm safe.
That's the truth. I think, I've had those moments where, I realize that, and it feels just like, oh, yeah, like I am totally at home. Like even in this earth, like I'm made of this earth. This is everything, It's like there is no away or separations. The kind of the dissolution of that entire illusion, of being separate.
That's healing. Yeah, that's a beautiful question. Yeah, thank you. We're all walking towards that, right?
Yeah,
like that's we're all walking home. We're walking each other home, right?
Wow.
Yeah. Well, awesome.
Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I love this so much. This is so great. This is so good.
And don't forget to like and subscribe.
Yes, please. I
think
we
that's
appreciate
it. All right.
Yeah.
Till next time.
Till next
Thank
time.
you. Next time.